So the point I want to make today is about relationships because relationships are important. They affect us in our personal lives as well as our professional lives. Many people do not know when to hold them and when to fold them. They confuse sweat equity with sunk costs. Meaning, I know some men and women who have worked for years to obtain their education and establish their credit and build their professional reputation and purchase a home and buy a car. And then they enter into a relationship with Silky Smooth, Shady Grady, or Tricky Ricky, whom they met at the club over the weekend or online. And let's make a point that Silky Slime, Shady Grady, Tricky Ricky, that they can be a man, or we can be talking about a man or a woman. Or there's some people hang on to past acquaintances from their childhood, from their old neighborhoods, people who are involved in less than savory ventures. They don't consider the sweat equity that they have invested in themselves and their lives when making casting choices. I have personally seen this lack of consideration dissolve people's sweat equity investments, sometimes slowly, other times. So let's talk about this principle in relationships. There are times in the past, before I did an enormous amount of cognitive restructuring on myself, that I would be in relationships with abusive or manipulative or mean people, and when they would do what they do, I would say, why did you do that to me? You should not treat people like that. See, I was in the land of should. Here we go, land of should. And I was shoulding on myself. See, shoulding. I was shoulding on myself. Okay, because these were usually individuals who had already did the same thing to me before, and I would give them another chance. I would be like, I know, we shouldn't treat people. You shouldn't treat people like that. So I'm going to give you another opportunity to not do that again. And then they would do the same thing again. And so I would have another conversation with them, like, you shouldn't do that to me. I don't do that to you. I would never do that to you. You should not treat people like that. And so I think they were thinking should too. They were probably thinking you should find somebody who shares your principles and standards for a relationship if you have a problem with my philosophies about lie. You are not important or interesting enough to spend time with. If a child grew up in an environment where people did not spend time with them but spent time with other people, they have that lie. You're not important or interesting enough to spend time with. Therefore, you have to compensate for your presence with goods and services. You have to pay people to spend time with you. So that's how the lies are implanted during the formative years. Now, when we start talking about these lies, don't get overwhelmed and get depressed because a lot of people, they get excited when they first get the lies. They're buying workbook, or when they hear about the program, they come to 2 groups, they're excited. But then when they figure out, hey, I suffer with almost every lie in this stack of the 100 most commonly seen lies. These lies work in all sorts of combinations, and people get overwhelmed. Don't get depressed. It's going to be a process. The reason I say don't get depressed is because this stuff is happening whether you're aware of it or not. Meaning, if someone was programmed to believe that they are at the mercy of other people's decisions, well, therefore, personal safety requires isolation. If I feel like I have to accept whatever you bring to the table and I'm not allowed to challenge it, then I would tend to want to isolate. That's the only way I can be safe. If a person has been programmed to believe that they have to compensate for their presence with goods and services, well, I can be safe if I'm alone because I don't have to pay you to allow me to exist. Okay, the meter stops running when I'm by myself. If a person has been programmed to believe that they have to accept abuse without question, they would tend to isolate. And so as it relates to the human service industry, a lot of people worship at the shrine of best practice. They be like, oh, this is a best practice. And everyone's worshiping at the shrine of the best practice. Best practice means that's the best we have so far. That's all best practice means. Best practice means this is the best ideal someone has come up with thus far. So you don't have to worship there. You don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but we can certainly scrutinize a concept to see what is working and distinguish it from what is being made to appear as if it's working.